And welcome back to Cape Town. We are at the Century City Convention Centre and of course here for the inaugural summit of green hydrogen in South Africa. And as you know, you may have heard over the past 2 days, this is of course important, and we had the privilege of seeing in the last segment exactly how we produce this green hydrogen and clearly demonstrating how clean this is in terms of renewable energy and energy sources. And of course, moving into the future, I was listening to Leanne's conversation earlier on where she was talking about the summit yesterday with Andrew Healy in connection with the unemployment figures, and absolutely right in terms of that just transition, how it's meant to happen. But I think this is a demonstration of where we are headed. And joining me now is the Premier of the Northern Cape, Zamani Saul. Thanks so much for being with us this morning, Premier.
Good morning, Sakina, and good morning to your viewers as well.
So, we have been looking around, reading up on what is happening. And the Northern Cape, you've actually produced this brochure that we have here. And very interesting, just looking at some of the developments and what exactly it is that you are busying yourselves with at the moment. The President also mentioned, as did Minister De Lille, some of the projects that are in the pipeline, and a few of those sit in the Northern Cape.
We are the trailblazers on renewable energy, as you might know, and as well as trailblazers for green hydrogen. We are the first province in the country to adopt a provincial green hydrogen strategy. Western Cape followed suit. But if you look what happened in the past 7 years with regard to investment in renewable energy, there's about 200 billion rand that has been invested in South Africa on renewable energy, of which 64% was in the Northern Cape, which is about 128 billion rand. We are looking at following exactly the same trend when it comes to green hydrogen. The 9 projects that were announced yesterday by both the Minister and the Premier that are registered on the Infrastructure South Africa pipeline, 4 of them are from the Northern Cape, which actually tells you of what is coming to the Northern Cape, massive investment around green hydrogen, and we definitely do everything within our power to ensure that the province derives maximum benefits out of that.
And of course, some of the obvious questions, the key milestones, the time frames around all of this, because
Yes.
It's of no use if we're just speaking in a vacuum.
Yes, it's massive investments, and obviously with such kind of investment, there's time frames that we'll have to look into. There's immediate things that we'll have to do, and the immediate things is to ensure that we finish all the feasibility studies, we get investors on board, and some of this project must come to financial close. One of the projects which is far ahead than all other projects is the Priska Power Reserve, which actually the Minister have announced that it might come into full operation by 2026, which is about 9.3 billion rand capex project that will be invested in the Northern Cape, in a small town like Priska, and it will definitely change the socio-economic landscape there.
And I spoke to Mita Mhlari yesterday about that. And key, I think, for both her and I would imagine, South Africans at large, is the fact that the community needs to benefit from this ultimately. All too often, there are projects and the communities themselves seem to benefit very little. How are you going to ensure that happens?
That's definitely one of the areas that we'll have to look into, and particularly with this program of Priska Power Reserve, they've already established and gave a certain percentage of shareholding to the community, which we highly appreciate. They also went further to look at people from the local community who will also be shareholders in the venture. So we highly appreciated that. But when there is such a big investment in any community, the immediate benefit for the community is employment. If we say our primary struggle now is to reduce unemployment and fight poverty, the only way in which we can substantively reduce unemployment is to get our people in gainful employment. We can reduce poverty is to get our people in gainful employment. And if you look at that project, the Priska Power Reserve, at the peak of its construction, there might be about 2,000 to 3,000 jobs in a very small community. And we firmly believe that if we build on that, we might be able to ensure that we get people in the Northern Cape jobs.
So with the Priska Power Reserve and every other project that will emanate from this, Premier, I think it is very key to as I said, take the community along, but you're already talking about beneficiation that's taken place at a local level. I had some messages yesterday from people after speaking to Mita from Priska who were asking me where, when. Mita had indicated that nothing is on the ground as in physically there yet. So you say by 2026 that project will be off the ground, which is great. But in terms of who has benefited, I mean, the level of transparency that needs to be adhered to here, are you satisfied with that at the moment? Because if I go to Priska right now, do the people in Priska know exactly who the local beneficiaries, shareholders are in this particular entity? Do they know?
Jack, projects goes through different phases, and with the initial phases of the project, one needs to tread very carefully, because these billions we are talking about, it's money of investors. And these investors want certain things in place before they can commit their money. And basically they want returns on what they put in the project. So that is where the project is now. We went with Abo Mita to Europe. We met different stakeholders to the project. And where we are now, I'm quite confident and quite happy with the progress that they have made. And where we are now, I'm quite confident that this project will take off.
And I'm just saying, Premier, you don't want us to come to Kimberley now to cover the protest, or to Priska, where the community is now shutting down, some work that needs to be done because they are unhappy. So I think as we are still at the initial stages of this, maybe something to look into if community members are asking questions, just upping the level of transparency. But just finally, how does the Northern Cape's hydrogen strategy fit into the national and, of course, global just energy transition?
For an example, now it's for the first time that you've got hydrogen projects which are in your infrastructure pipeline, and 9 of them were registered and announced yesterday. And what is very much important is for us to ensure that we use our hydrogen intervention to try and address the energy insecurity which is in the country, because I'm certain that hydrogen is about fuel and energy. And ours is to also ensure that through our intervention with regard to green hydrogen, we also ensure that the emission levels of the country goes down. And we want a balanced approach. There's a big debate South Africa around the issue of just energy transition with regard to coal. But I think the attitude of the national government is that we need a balanced approach with regard to that.
Well, Premier Saul, thanks so much for speaking to us, and, hoping once more to see all of this in action. So we'll pay you a visit up in the Northern Cape. We'd really love to come through and see all of this. You'll definitely see it in action.
And thank you very much, Sakina, for having us here.
Absolute pleasure. And that, of course, the Premier of the Northern Cape, Mr. Zamani Saul, Dr. Zamani Saul, I should say, and Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Patricia de Lille, of course, yesterday announcing those 9 projects that were to be gazetted, 4 of which will be in the Northern Cape. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye out for that. But for now, let's take you back to the studio and to a break, and more Morning Live to come after this.